You people don't have accounts like this. Step away before I call the police. The words echoed across the marble floors of Pinnacle Trust Bank like a slap in the face, loud enough to turn every head in the lobby. They weren't whispered or muttered under breath. They were spoken with certainty, with purpose, and with a smirk. Michael Reynolds, the bank's 50-year-old branch manager, stood behind the counter with his arms crossed, his voice cutting through the room like glass on tile. His eyes locked on the black woman standing before him in plain clothes. He didn't ask questions. He delivered judgment. And in 9 short minutes, the same woman he humiliated would fire him and every single member of his team. Before we dive in, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. If this moment shocked you like it did everyone in that bank, hit like. And if you believe dignity isn't about clothes, money, or skin color, subscribe now. Now. Let's rewind the clock and walk through one of the most jaw-dropping moments of public accountability you'll ever witness. It was 1 p.m. sharp on July 4th, when Maya Johnson walked through the glass doors of Pinnacle Trust Bank at 800 Fifth Avenue, New York City. She didn't come with an entourage or with cameras. She didn't wear designer heels or carry an expensive bag. In fact, she was dressed deliberately to avoid attention. Navy hoodie, plain jeans, and comfortable sneakers. To the average person, she looked like any other customer. But Maya Johnson was no ordinary woman. She was the CEO of Pinnacle Financial Group, the parent company of Pinnacle Trust Bank, and with a $12 billion portfolio under her watch. She was here for one reason, to see for herself if the discrimination complaints flooding her inbox were real. She had read message after message from customers who said they were treated differently because of how they looked, brushed off, interrogated, made to feel small. Maya wanted the truth, and today, she was going to get it. She stepped up to the counter and politely asked to access her corporate account. That's when the air in the room shifted. Michael Reynolds raised an eyebrow, scanned her outfit, and sneered. "Corporate account?" he scoffed. "Ma'am, this is a high-net-worth business line. If you're trying to cash a check or open a savings account, that's the other line," Maya replied calmly. "I'm here for my corporate account. Here's my card." She slid a black metal business card across the counter. It bore the discreet but unmistakable logo of Pinnacle Financial Group. Teller Sarah Coleman, a 32-year-old woman standing nearby, chuckled under her breath and hit the intercom. "Check your details again, please," she said through the speaker. Her voice carried through the lobby, loud enough for everyone to hear. Maya's jaw clenched. She repeated herself, slower this time. "I need access to my account. The credentials are in order." But Michael wasn't listening. "That card could be fake," he said, not even picking it up. "We've had issues with stolen credentials before. We'll need to verify ownership." Another teller, Ethan Nguyen, 29, stepped forward and casually picked up Maya's card. He turned it over like it was dirty, inspected it with narrowed eyes, and said, "Where exactly did you get this?" Then, without asking permission, he walked to the back and returned moments later with a small silver safe. He held the card up for the lobby to see, then locked it inside. "We'll keep this secure until we sort it out," he said, like he was doing her a favor. "This card doesn't match your look," he added quietly, but not quietly enough. That sentence, "This card doesn't match your look," wasn't just a comment. It was a verdict. It said, "You don't belong here." Watching from a leather chair nearby was Lila Chen, 30, a financial blogger and customer of the bank. She raised her phone and began recording. "Racism at Pinnacle Trust," she muttered as she hit post to X. Not far away, Noah Carter, a white data analyst in a gray polo, looked up from his laptop. He caught the exchange, then pulled out his phone and joined in. "This is unreal," he said. "I'm posting this." At that moment, a quiet voice spoke up from behind the counter. Olivia Martinez, a 28-year-old customer service rep, stepped forward. "Sir, I think there's been a mistake," she said to Michael. "This customer hasn't done anything wrong." But Michael brushed her off. "She's delaying business," he said. "Her account's probably flagged." The room grew quiet. People stared. Maya could feel her heart pounding, not from fear, but fury. 15 years ago. She'd walked into a bank just like this one, wearing a dress shirt and slacks, and been told to come back with a parent or someone who understands finances. That moment never left her. It had carved a fire into her that propelled her through grad school, through every boardroom pitch, every sleepless night building her firm from the ground up. Now she was standing in her own building, facing the same assumptions. But this time, she held the power. Michael leaned across the counter. "If you don't have proper verification, I'm going to have to ask you to step aside," he said. Sarah crossed her arms. "We'll need proof of funds to continue," she added. Voice sharp. Maya pulled out her phone and dialed. "Talia," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Activate the internal system. I want every camera feed in this lobby recorded and secured. It's time." On the other end, Talia Brooks, Maya's executive assistant, replied instantly. "It's set. Do you want me to notify the board?" "Not yet," Maya said. "Let them dig their own grave." Ethan returned with the safe and placed it on the counter again, locking it tight. "We'll keep this until security clears it," he said. Maya stared at him. "You're going to regret that." Olivia stepped closer. "Mr. Reynolds, I'm telling you, this customer is legitimate. I've seen this kind of account before." Michael turned to her coldly. "Do your job, Olivia, or step away." But she didn't move. Meanwhile, Noah was still filming. "This is being watched by hundreds already," he whispered. "It's about to go viral." Maya met his gaze and gave a single nod. Then, as if to seal the moment, Michael snatched the safe and slid it under the counter. "She's out of place," he muttered to Sarah. But Noah, still holding his phone, had read the name on the card before it disappeared. "Maya Johnson," he said aloud. "That's what the card said. Isn't that the name on the building?" Maya's expression didn't change, but her voice cut through the silence like a razor. "You're ruining Pinnacle from the inside." The words hung in the air as the lobby began to shift. Customers stirred. Whispers grew louder, and Olivia stepped forward again. "You're going too far," she said quietly, but clearly. And that's when it began. The revolt. Ethan Nguyen returned to the counter. The safe still locked and the card secured inside. But this time his words weren't just dismissive. They were threatening. "This card's suspicious. If you don't leave now, I'll call security and have you removed." His tone was dry, cold, and loud enough for half the lobby to hear. He held Maya's future hostage inside that safe and treated it like evidence from a crime scene. Maya didn't flinch. Her eyes narrowed slightly, but she said nothing. That silence only seemed to embolden him. Sarah Coleman, standing rigid beside Michael, took a step toward Maya and grabbed her by the arm, not forcefully, but just enough to be invasive, loud enough to make a scene. "You need to go. Now!" she snapped, her voice trembling with control and condescension. "We don't deal with liars." Ethan raised his voice over the lobby chatter, pointing at Maya as if identifying a criminal. "She's a fraud!" His words didn't just accuse, they branded. It was the same kind of public humiliation that had driven Maya to build her empire. The last time someone called her a liar in a bank, she had been 18, fresh out of high school, holding her first paycheck, and treated like a thief just because of how she looked. That wound had never fully healed, and today, it was being ripped wide open, again, in her own building. Maya's breathing stayed calm, but her grip on the phone tightened. On the other end, Her assistant Talia Brooks remained ready. "Talia," she said evenly, "escalate this internally. Start the incident log. Full system access." Talia's voice came back just as firm. "It's already recording. We're documenting everything. The board will have this by end of day." Maya didn't nod, didn't blink, just kept her gaze fixed on Michael Reynolds as he paced behind the counter like he owned the air she breathed. Michael muttered under his breath, "She's causing a disruption." Then turned to Ethan and added, "We've got to get her out of here before she starts shouting racism like the rest of them." The words weren't meant for the lobby, but they landed anyway, clear enough for a woman in the back of the line to lower her purse and tilt her head. Sarah gave Maya one final push toward the doors, enough to make it look like she was defending company policy. "You've made your scene. Now leave before we call NYPD." But the scene wasn't over. It was just beginning. Noah Carter, still live streaming on Reddit, moved closer. "People are watching this in real time," he muttered. "They're not buying your act." Olivia Martinez, still rooted behind the desk, stood a little taller. "This is wrong," she said, clearly and calmly. Michael shot her a glare, but she didn't back down. "She hasn't raised her voice. She hasn't broken a rule. She hasn't even been rude. And I've seen that card. I know it's real." Michael ignored her. "Stay in your lane, Olivia." But Olivia didn't blink. "This is my lane," she said. And then, for the first time since Maya had entered the bank, the tide began to shift. The customers who had watched silently began murmuring. A man in a blue button-down near the teller window said, "This doesn't feel right," a woman in a gray cardigan whispered. "They're targeting her." Lila Chen, still recording from the seating area, posted the footage to Reddit with the caption, "Another day, another black woman humiliated by her own money." The video started gaining traction. In under 3 minutes, it hit 1,200 views. And still, Michael kept going. "I've had enough," he barked. "Sarah, escort her out, now." Sarah hesitated for the briefest second, but then stepped forward again, arms out, pushing Maya toward the door. Maya stood her ground. "Return my card, Ethan." Her voice didn't raise, but something in it changed. Something in her tone made the room pause. Ethan's smirk twitched. "You'll get it back when the investigation clears. If it clears." Maya looked him dead in the eye. "That's not how this ends." Then came the twist. Olivia, hands trembling slightly but her voice unwavering, turned to the customers and spoke not as a bank employee, but as a witness. "This isn't the first time," she said. "We've had complaints before. People treated like this. And every time I tried to raise it," she looked at Michael, "they were ignored." Michael turned bright red. "That's enough," he hissed. "You're jeopardizing your job." Olivia met his glare and replied, "Maybe some jobs aren't worth keeping." The lobby erupted. Customers started recording. Some stepped closer to the counter, murmuring words like lawsuit, discrimination, and shameful. Maya looked around the room, not to gloat, but to absorb. These people weren't plants. They weren't staff. They were strangers. And they were siding with her. The energy shifted again, this time in her favor. And then Noah raised his phone high and called out, "This is injustice, and we're not letting it slide." The lobby echoed with the sound of chairs scraping as customers stood. Michael stiffened. Sarah lowered her arms. Even Ethan looked unsure. Maya turned back toward the counter, her voice steady and sharp. "This card has more authority than you'll ever understand, and you've just locked away your job with it." She stepped forward, not toward the door, but toward the center of the bank. A dozen phones captured her every move. Olivia stepped beside her. "I'm with Maya," she said firmly. Michael stammered. "You're siding with a stranger over your own team?" Olivia answered. I'm siding with what's right. What would you say to Michael Reynolds if this were your mother or sister pushed out of her own bank? Drop a comment. Your voice matters. Silence protects this behavior. And remember, these moments count most when no one's watching. Maya stepped closer to the safe behind the counter, the one now holding her card hostage. She glanced at Ethan and said, "You're going to unlock that in about 5 minutes. And when you do, I suggest you start packing." Olivia turned toward Talia's voice, still audible through the phone on speaker. "The system is live. Documentation's being mirrored to the compliance department," Talia said. "Would you like to initiate internal review protocols?" Maya didn't hesitate. "Do it!" Michael began sweating. "This is insane," he muttered, but he didn't sound confident anymore. The power was shifting, not with threats or noise, but with truth, and with witnesses. The bank lobby, once indifferent, now felt like a courtroom. Phones were still rolling. The footage was already circulating, and somewhere deep inside the system of Pinnacle Financial, an irreversible decision was in motion. "Get her out. I don't care how. Just get her out of here." Michael Reynolds's voice cracked through the marble lobby of Pinnacle Trust Bank like thunder, his face flushed, his composure unraveling. He was no longer the smug manager who had scoffed at Maya's credentials minutes earlier. He was a man backed into a corner, barking orders he couldn't control. "Call building security if you have to," he shouted toward Ethan, whose knuckles tightened around the edge of the counter. Sarah Coleman moved first. Her heels clacked across the tile as she stormed toward Maya, grabbing her by the wrist and snapping, "Let's go, now!" Maya didn't move. She simply looked down at Sarah's hand and then back up into her eyes, calm, controlled, but with a steel edge that made Sarah pause. That hesitation cracked the room open. Olivia, still behind the desk, stepped in between them. "She hasn't done anything wrong," she said, her voice louder now, more sure of itself. "You can't just put hands on her because you don't like how she looks." Sarah's voice trembled. "She doesn't belong here." Maya's response was immediate and clear. "I own this building." But no one seemed to hear it yet, at least not fully. The intercom crackled to life as Ethan, apparently scrambling to maintain control, pressed a button and said through the loudspeaker, "Attention, staff, be advised. We have a potential fraud incident at window 2. The voice echoed through the entire floor like a scarlet letter, drawing eyes, raising brows, forcing Maya into the center of a spectacle she had once sworn she'd never let happen again. "She's a fraud," Ethan repeated, smirking to the crowd, who now stood half shocked, half curious. Phones lifted again. Lila Chen's was already recording from a new angle. She whispered into her mic, "This is humiliation in real time." On the other side of the lobby, Noah Carter had started a second stream. "Reddit's going to explode," he said. "They're still pushing her out." Maya stood perfectly still as Sarah pushed again, this time harder, trying to move her toward the exit. A few customers audibly gasped. One woman near the teller line muttered, "Why aren't they listening?" And that's when Maya finally raised her voice, not loud, not panicked, but with the force of authority that only comes when you know exactly who you are. "You lay another finger on me," she said, "and your name will be off payroll before you leave the building." Sarah froze. Michael barked again. "Enough, Olivia. If you don't get back to your post, you'll be next." But Olivia didn't budge. Instead, she took a step closer to Maya. "I'm not going anywhere." She looked Michael in the eye. "This woman's not a threat. You are." The words cut through the lobby like glass underfoot. Maya's heart was pounding, not from fear, but from a deep, slow-burning fury that had lived inside her for decades. She'd seen it all before. Different city, different bank, same assumptions, same tone. But now she had the leverage to end it. "You're done, Michael," she said, steady as stone. "You just don't know it yet." Sarah took a step back, her face pale. Ethan's smirk faded slightly, but he stayed behind the desk. The room felt like it was holding its breath. Then came the voices, not from Maya, not from Olivia, but from the customers. "She's a VIP," one man called out from the back. "I've seen her face before. She's somebody," another added. "You guys are going viral right now. You should be ashamed." Lila's voice rang out next, strong and fierce. "Reddit's at 3,000 viewers and climbing. People are calling this a hate incident." Michael's eyes darted around the room. "They're just internet trolls," he muttered. "They don't control this branch." But he didn't believe it. Not anymore. Maya turned toward the growing crowd. "You've seen what they do when no one's watching," she said. "But you're watching now, so what happens next? What we all choose to do next is what defines this place going forward." Ethan scoffed. "This isn't a courtroom. You can't rally people like this." Maya looked directly at him. "You just locked my name in a safe. That's not fraud. It's sabotage." Talia's voice came through the phone again, just loud enough to catch on someone's camera mic. "Maya, the board is asking if they should issue an internal press release." Maya didn't answer yet. She scanned the room, every set of eyes now locked on her. Then came the large twist, the moment that changed everything, one by one. The customers began moving, physically placing themselves between Maya and the exit. A woman in a navy skirt suit stepped in front of Sarah. A teenage boy in gym shorts stood next to Olivia. A father with a stroller wheeled his child to the side and said, "She's not going anywhere." Sarah took another step back. "What are you doing?" she asked them, bewildered. "You can't just stand in the way." But they could. And they did. A full human barrier now separated Maya from the bank staff. It wasn't organized. It wasn't loud. But it was real. Olivia's eyes welled up for a moment. Then she cleared her throat and said, "This is what happens when people finally say enough." Maya stepped forward, not to flee, not to speak, but to stand shoulder to shoulder with them. And in that moment, no one questioned what kind of card she carried. No one cared about her hoodie or her jeans. All that mattered was that she stood firm while others tried to erase her. Sarah glanced over at Michael, uncertain. "What do we do?" she asked. "They're not moving." Michael turned to Ethan, flustered. "End the announcement. Shut the intercom off. This is getting out of hand." But Ethan didn't move. His hands were shaking. Lila's voice cut through again. "They tried to erase a black woman's identity. And now the whole world knows who she is." Maya turned back toward the front desk, her voice low and unshaken. "Your bias is exposed. Your actions are recorded. Your power is gone." She walked toward the center of the counter, placed both hands flat on the marble, and said, "Let's finish this." The moment froze like a frame in a film. Customers stood firm. Staff fell silent. And somewhere, on thousands of phones across the country, people were watching one of the most powerful reversals of injustice in a modern-day banking institution unfold in real time. "Push her out, now!" Michael's voice rang out like a fire alarm, cracking through the tension already boiling over in the Pinnacle Trust Bank lobby. His face was blotchy with rage, jaw clenched so tightly the tendons stood out against his neck. "I don't care what she says. Get her out of my branch." He motioned wildly at Sarah, who hesitated just long enough to look human. "Do it!" he barked. Sarah stepped toward Maya again, arms tense, trying to mask the panic now creeping into her voice. "You need to leave. This is a private financial institution." She grabbed Maya's forearm again, firmer this time. "Now!" But her words didn't carry the same weight as before. Across the lobby, customers had stopped whispering. Some had moved. Some had stepped in front of the doors. Some were still filming, silently recording what they instinctively knew was going to end badly for the staff. and in the center of it all stood Maya Johnson, composed, still, and no longer just defending herself. She wasn't here to ask for access anymore. She was here to show them what real power looked like. She gently peeled Sarah's hand from her arm and said, "Touch me again, and you'll be explaining it to corporate legal." Sarah flinched, retreating half a step, but before anyone could process it, another voice filled the room. It was Olivia, stronger now, louder than before. "That's enough, Mr. Reynolds. This isn't how we treat people." Michael turned to her, incredulous. "Are you seriously doing this? For what? Some woman pretending she owns the place?" Olivia didn't blink. "She doesn't have to pretend," she said. The weight of that sentence hung heavy. Customers looked at each other. Lila Chen slowly lowered her phone and muttered, "Oh my God, is she?" From the edge of the desk, Maya reached into her pocket, pulled out her phone, and calmly pressed a button. "David Sullivan," she said into the speaker. "It's Maya. I need immediate authorization for internal terminations. Code red, staff-wide." The voice on the other end was crisp and unfazed. "Understood. Confirming full executive control. Are you safe?" Maya's eyes never left Michael's. "Yes, but they're not." She could feel the floor shifting beneath them, not physically, but in power. And everyone in that lobby felt it too. Sarah stepped back in slow motion, her posture unraveling by the second. Ethan, who had been clenching the desk with white knuckles, dropped his hands and looked away. Michael tried to gather himself. "You can't just fire us on the spot. That's not how this works." But Maya was already nodding to Talia on the other line. "Submit formal incident logs for Sarah Coleman, Ethan Nguyen, and Michael Reynolds. Begin immediate HR closure. Lock branch system access." Talia's voice came back. "Confirmed. Effective immediately." It was happening in real time. No hearings, no warnings, no quiet HR emails, just swift, surgical accountability. That's when the customers surged. A woman near the exit, previously quiet, walked up and said to Michael, "You owe her an apology. Publicly." Another man, arms crossed, added, "You humiliated her for being black and wearing a hoodie. Don't act like this wasn't about race." Michael opened his mouth to protest, but it was already too late. Lila posted again to Reddit. Breaking. Black woman fired entire Pinnacle Trust staff after being profiled. Identity reveal at 1:08 p.m. Wild. Olivia turned to Maya and asked gently, "Do you want me to walk you upstairs?" Maya looked at her and shook her head. "No. We finish it right here." Just then, another customer, a young woman in a red blazer, called out across the room, "You're Maya Johnson. You gave that talk at the Women in Finance Summit last year. I remember your face." The confirmation wasn't loud, but it was electric. The rest of the lobby snapped into attention. Maya had been tested, pushed, and publicly dragged by her own staff, and now the entire bank, her bank, was watching her reclaim what was hers. Michael stumbled backward, as if the truth finally hit him in the chest. "Wait," he gasped. "You're the CEO?" Maya didn't even respond. She just nodded once toward Olivia and said, "Get me the override key. I want access to the teller vault." Olivia rushed behind the counter without hesitation. Meanwhile, Sarah's voice cracked as she whispered to Ethan, "She owns the building. We tried to throw the CEO out of her own bank." Ethan, too stunned to speak, simply leaned against the counter like it was the only thing holding him upright. And then the very large twist hit like lightning through the room. Sarah, shaking, stepped forward and said, "There's something else you should know." All eyes turned. Maya raised her eyebrows. "Speak." Sarah glanced nervously at Michael, then at Ethan. "This wasn't the first time." Michael told us to watch certain customers. He said if they looked urban or foreign, we needed to verify harder. He had a list. We all knew. Her voice cracked on the last word. We let it happen. The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. Maya's expression didn't change. How long? She asked. Months, Sarah said. Maybe longer. Lila dropped her phone into her lap and whispered, That's the story. Right there. Michael's lips parted, but no sound came out. Ethan stepped away from the desk entirely, mumbling something inaudible. Maya turned back toward the phone. Talia, begin company-wide compliance audit. This is bigger than one branch. David's voice came back, no longer calm but sharp. I'm bringing legal in, and PR. The board will support full reform. Olivia placed the override key in Maya's hand and stepped back like someone handing a judge the gavel. Maya placed it on the counter. Lock teller access, freeze activity logs. We'll be scrubbing every file touched in the last 6 months. A ripple of quiet approval moved through the lobby. Customers weren't just bystanders anymore. They were witnesses to corporate reckoning. That's how you lead, one of them said quietly. That's what justice looks like. Maya stood in the middle of it all, no longer in defense mode, now fully in control. Sarah looked at the ground. Michael, lips trembling, whispered, I didn't know she was the CEO. And Olivia, without turning to him, replied, That's the problem. You judged her without knowing anything. Maya finally looked at the crowd and said, This branch is closed, effective immediately, but we're not stopping here. What started in this lobby ends across every Pinnacle location nationwide. We're rewriting the rules. Customers clapped. Not a cheer, but a slow, deliberate clap of agreement, of solidarity, of truth. And in that moment, the marble-floored lobby of Pinnacle Trust Bank was no longer just a bank. It was the stage of a reckoning. Maya stepped forward, past the barrier of customers still holding the line, and walked calmly to the center of the lobby, her voice low, but heavy with the weight of everything that had just unfolded. My name, she began, is Maya Johnson. I'm the CEO of Pinnacle Financial Group. The words didn't need to be shouted. They moved through the marble and glass like an earthquake. Time seemed to stop. I own this building, this branch, and every system that powers it, and effective immediately. The following people are no longer employees of this institution. She didn't glance at Michael, or Sarah, or Ethan. She didn't have to. Michael Reynolds, Sarah Coleman, Ethan Nguyen, you're terminated. You are no longer authorized to speak on behalf of this company, and you are no longer welcome inside its walls. Olivia, standing behind her, didn't cheer. She simply nodded with deep, quiet relief. Maya wasn't done. She pulled out her phone again. Talia, she said, confirm the terminations. Talia responded over speaker, her voice calm and professional. Confirmed. All 3 are locked out of internal systems. Access terminated. Incident reports filed. HR has been notified. David Sullivan, board member of Pinnacle Financial, came on next. Ms. Johnson, the board is aligned. Compliance supports your decisions, and we've started drafting our reform policy. Public statement pending, Maya replied simply. Make it clear. This isn't about damage control. It's about real change. The murmurs in the room were no longer whispers. Customers were stunned, some holding their breath, others just frozen in disbelief. Maya turned toward Ethan, who now looked like the floor might open beneath him. You're also banned from rehire, permanently, she added. I won't allow people like you to return through another door. Ethan's face crumpled, his earlier arrogance gone. He looked to Michael for backup. But Michael, for the first time, was speechless. He took a step back, his mouth hanging open, unable to form words. Who are you? Sarah asked, her voice small and broken, as if the question had just occurred to her. Maya didn't raise her voice. She never had to. "I'm the person you assumed didn't belong," she said. "Because of what I wore. Because of the color of my skin. Because I didn't match your idea of power." She paused and let the moment land. "But I've been watching this branch for a long time, and today was your test. You failed." A few customers clapped. Slowly, softly, out of respect, not celebration. Maya looked around the room, her expression shifting from steel to clarity. "This isn't about punishing people for mistakes," she said. "It's about removing those who make bias their policy." She turned to Olivia and smiled gently. "You spoke up when it mattered. You stood alone before anyone else did. Effective immediately. I'm promoting you to Senior Customer Relations Manager. Full benefits, pay increase, and a seat at the next Corporate Equity Summit." Olivia's eyes welled up with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "For seeing me," Maya replied. "You earned it." Then came the huge twist, one that neither Maya nor anyone in the room expected. Sarah, trembling now, took a step forward. "There's something else," she said, her voice shaking. "Something I should have said sooner." The room quieted again. Michael turned sharply. "Don't," he muttered under his breath. But Sarah didn't stop. "Michael and Ethan, they had a list," she confessed. "A list of customers they told us to watch. They said if someone came in and looked urban, or if their accent sounded off, we were supposed to flag their transactions, delay service, ask for extra ID." She swallowed hard. "Sometimes, they'd even lock cards in the back, like they did to her. They said it was for fraud protection, but it was targeted. I didn't speak up because I didn't want to lose my job. But I can't stay silent anymore." Gasps filled the lobby. Lila, still recording, whispered into her mic. "This is deeper than we thought," a man near the back muttered. "That's a civil rights violation." Maya's jaw set. "How long has this been going on?" she asked. "Since I transferred here," Sarah replied, voice cracking. 8 months, maybe longer. No one at corporate ever followed up on the complaints." David's voice came back through Maya's phone. "We're initiating a full-scale internal audit. Every flagged account, every incident. This stops now." Maya looked to Talia. "Draft the first phase of the reform directive. I want mandatory anti-bias retraining, updated accountability channels, and whistleblower protections. Olivia will help lead it." "Already in motion," Talia responded. Maya turned back to the room. "Let me be clear," she said, her voice echoing through the lobby. "We are not cleaning house quietly. This reform will be public, it will be enforced, and it will be permanent. No more shadows, no more silence." Ethan hung his head. Michael stepped backward until he hit the edge of the counter. He opened his mouth to object, but the crowd was already turning away from him. The cameras had shifted. The narrative had changed. This was no longer about a customer being mistreated. It was about an entire system being exposed. As the termination orders finalized, and Maya began collecting the documents from Jessica, who had turned over Michael's secret customer list, Olivia stepped forward. "Ms. Johnson," she said quietly, "do you want to continue the investigation upstairs?" Maya looked around the lobby, now filled with supportive customers, former skeptics, and digital witnesses. "No," she said. "We finished this here, where it started, where they tried to erase me." She took a breath and looked to the stunned staff still standing along the back wall. "If anyone else wants to come forward, now's your chance, because I promise you this. What you say today could save someone tomorrow." A few employees looked down, others looked away, but the message had been sent, clear, final, and inarguable. Outside the glass doors, A small group had begun to gather. Passers-by who had seen the live stream. Media contacts who had been tagged in the original posts. Maya looked at the growing attention and said, not to the cameras, but to herself, "Good. Let them see." Because this wasn't a press stunt. It wasn't a PR move. It was a reckoning. And it had started in the very bank that thought it could silence her. Maya stood near the center of the now silent bank lobby, the air charged with something heavier than tension. Purpose. With the staff terminations complete, the customers still watching, and the media quietly beginning to gather outside the glass doors, she turned toward Olivia and nodded once. "Let's begin the cleanup." Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried like a closing gavel. Olivia walked back to the counter and began instructing the remaining employees, those not involved in the incident, to lock all teller stations, halt all active transactions, and redirect all inquiries to the central line. "This branch is frozen," Maya said firmly. "Nothing moves until this place is clean." From her phone, Talia confirmed. "All branch access codes have been updated. Reynolds, Nguyen, and Coleman are fully removed from the system. Incident files are already syncing with compliance." Maya turned to Jessica, the junior teller who had come forward earlier. "I want you to scan every flagged customer file and send them to corporate legal and me directly. No redactions." Jessica nodded quickly, hands shaking slightly but firm in her resolve. "You'll have them within the hour," she said. David Sullivan's voice joined over the line again. "Public Affairs is preparing the statement for media outlets. Maya, your leadership is about to set a new precedent." Maya didn't smile. She didn't slow down. "Good," she said. "Make sure it includes the phrase, 'zero tolerance for bias.'" Then she looked back at the customers. "To everyone who stood here and didn't back down, thank you. Your voices mattered. You helped build the future of this company today." Around her, the atmosphere had shifted. What had begun as humiliation had turned into structural reform, and it was happening in real time. Lila Chen ended her live stream and began typing furiously on her phone, already drafting the headline, "Black CEO fires staff on the spot, launches nationwide reform after viral incident." Noah walked over to Maya quietly. "That clip's at almost 700,000 views," he said. "People are sharing it everywhere. You just became a symbol." Maya shook her head gently. "I'm not a symbol. I'm a CEO doing what should have been done a long time ago." Just as she finished speaking, Talia's voice returned through the phone with new urgency. "Maya, I think you should hear this directly." There was a brief pause, and then Michael's voice, tired, cornered, and bitter, came through on a pre-recorded compliance call taken during his exit processing. "We didn't just profile walk-ins," he said. "It was deeper. We were told to look out for problem accounts. Ones with heavy cash withdrawals, odd names, foreign wire activity. I passed that down the chain. I didn't make the rules. I followed what I thought corporate wanted." The room went still again. Maya's fingers curled slightly at her side. "That's a lie," she muttered. "No such directive exists." David came on again, this time serious, with a colder tone. "If he claims it came from above, we need to launch a region-wide audit. There may be more branches involved. I'll have legal and ethics leads on it tonight." Maya nodded once. "Do it. And if any executive is involved, I want them out by morning." That was the massive twist. This wasn't just about one branch. It might have been part of a broader system of unchecked profiling buried under vague policy language and unmonitored discretion. Maya felt the weight of it press against her chest. Not fear, but responsibility. This was her company, her name, and she would not allow it to stand on a legacy of silence. "No more selective enforcement," she said aloud. "No more language that lets bias hide behind protocol." She turned to Olivia. "Starting tomorrow, We're creating an internal watchdog unit. You're leading it. Jessica will join as your first investigator. Olivia blinked, stunned. I don't even know what to say. Maya placed a hand on her shoulder. Say you'll help us make sure this never happens again. Olivia nodded, voice cracking. Yes, I will. Outside, through the clear windows, reporters had begun setting up tripods. Maya looked to Talia. Let them film. Let them ask. We're not hiding behind closed doors, Talia replied. Already informed media relations. You'll have talking points within the hour. Maya turned to face the room once more, but this time not as the woman they dismissed, ignored, or humiliated. This time as the woman who burned the system down to build something better. This isn't the end, she said. This is where it starts. By the time the camera crews entered the lobby and the last customer left with quiet nods of respect, the weight of what had just taken place settled over the space like the stillness after a storm. The terminated staff, Michael, Sarah, and Ethan, were gone, escorted out under corporate order, their system access revoked, their names marked for regulatory review. Within 24 hours, their misconduct would be under federal scrutiny, with compliance teams combing through transaction logs and audio footage for signs of broader civil rights violations. But that wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Maya stood beneath the high ceilings of Pinnacle Trust Bank's flagship branch, no longer just its owner, but its reckoner. What she had done wasn't loud, and it wasn't performative. It was surgical. She had cut out the infection without apology, and now, standing in the stillness, she began writing the next chapter. Her phone buzzed again. Talia's voice came through, calm and efficient as ever. News outlets are running it. Maya, major coverage, CNN, Reuters, even Bloomberg. Headlines are calling it a corporate justice milestone. Maya didn't flinch. That's not the story, she said. The story is what comes next, behind her. Olivia and Jessica were already drafting the first anti-bias reform memo. Olivia would help lead a new internal office dedicated to inclusion, transparency, and oversight. Jessica, once overlooked, now had a seat at the table. The very people who had been silenced were now designing the system meant to protect others from that silence. And that, Maya knew, was the true victory. 3 hours later, Maya sat with David Sullivan and legal counsel, finalizing immediate changes to Pinnacle's internal policy structure. Anonymous reporting channels were strengthened. Retaliation clauses were eliminated. All regional managers would be retrained, recertified, or replaced. The culture of selective scrutiny, once hidden behind business jargon and unwritten rules, was being pulled into the light. But change didn't stop at structure. Maya had one more call to make. That evening, she announced the launch of a new diversity and accountability initiative, funded directly from executive bonuses, a dedicated task force, staffed by employees who had previously submitted ignored complaints, would now hold quarterly audits of customer interactions. No more reports swept under rugs. No more miscommunications explained away. No more silence treated as policy. For Maya, it wasn't enough to fire the guilty. She needed to elevate the unheard. The final twist came days later, when an anonymous former district manager stepped forward and confirmed what Sarah had hinted at. Michael's profiling wasn't isolated. It was systemic, embedded in certain branches across 3 regions, passed down through internal emails and private trainings that danced around legality but bled discrimination. That manager handed over transcripts, documents, and a list of whistleblowers too afraid to speak. Until now, Maya didn't hesitate. Bring them in, she said. Give them immunity, and give them a seat at the table. With this information, Pinnacle Financial began a top-down purge, not just firings, but a cultural reckoning. led by the very people who had once been dismissed. 3 months later, on a crisp fall morning, Maya stood once again in the same lobby, but this time for a press conference. Behind her, a new team stood tall: Olivia, Jessica, Lila, now a senior media advisor for equity messaging, and several new hires brought on through community outreach. "This lobby once echoed with humiliation," Maya said into the mic. "But now, it speaks with purpose, because no one, no matter how they look, how they speak, or what they wear, should ever be made to prove they belong." Cameras clicked. Reporters took notes. But it was the bank's customers, watching from the back and through live streams, who understood the deeper truth. This was more than a public statement. It was the final page of one story and the first line of another. Maya ended her remarks with a promise. "The cost of prejudice," she said, "isn't just measured in lawsuits or headlines. It's measured in trust lost, dignity stolen, and futures derailed. I won't allow that cost to be passed down another generation." Then she paused. "And neither should you." Outside the bank, people gathered, not just customers, but former employees, community leaders, even teenagers who had seen the footage online and said, "This one hit different." They weren't there to cheer. They were there to witness what real accountability looked like: quiet, clear, complete. If you believe dignity should never depend on appearance, stand with Maya, speak up, share this story, and never stay silent in the face of bias.